soldiers from Britain, France.
This meeting is being recorded.
Excellent. That means you can't say anything derogatory or it will be on the record forever. I've had the opportunity to serve with soldiers from Canada, Australia, Britain, France, Italy, Spain, Poland, Germany, Greece, and I can assure you that what we're here to do, to talk about, is a uniquely American experience. The community board, the idea that we're going to reach out to our fellow citizens and ask them to take on a leadership responsibility for something important in their community is something that only takes place in America. Whether it's the township trustees, whether it's the Boys and Girls Club, whether it's our county health department, whether it's the Humane Society, you will not see anything like this outside of the United States. This is American. This idea that we're going to reach out and ask leaders in our community to come and provide their expertise and oversight for how we're going to operate. Whether that's a governmental organization, a quasi-government organization, a not-for-profit, we're reaching out and we're asking people to step in. That's uniquely American. When people ask you to join a board, your first response should be no. If they ask you again, you should say no and run away and change your phone number. Legally, I am here to tell you that a organization, Boys and Girls Club, County Health Department, Humane Society, any organization operates through its board. Any action that it takes is done at its board. As a board member, you are ultimately the leader and are responsible for everything that your organization does. Whether that's the township trustees, whether it's city council, whether that's Humane Society, you, Boys and Girls Club, you are responsible for what takes place. So why then do we do Robert's Rules of Order? Because we want to make sure, first and foremost, that we have a smooth, efficient meeting. We want to make sure that we're able to bring everybody together. We're able to cover the information that we need to cover, and that we want to be respectful for the time, both of the public and our board members. You were selected for board membership because you're good at something. You have a level of expertise, you have judgment, you have wisdom, you have experience that the other members of that board wanted to bring to the table. We want to make sure that there is an appropriate amount of time for you to gather the information that you need to make an informed decision, and then issue that informed decision. Provide your wisdom, provide your experience. You were not invited to the board to be a rubber stamp. It's not just sit down, shut up, and vote yet. That's not what being a board member is about. Being a board member is taking on that fiduciary duty. Under the law, the fiduciary duty is the highest duty that you can have. And when you serve as a board member, that's the duty that you have to the organization, to your fellow board members, and to the public. If you're a not-for-profit and you raise money and you take money from the community, you are responsible for making sure that those dollars are spent in the area for which they were designated. You can't go out as the Humane Society and say, we want to raise money to help take care of dogs and cats, get all of that money in, and then Light say, you know what? I've always wanted to go to Mexico. I'm going to take that money and go to Mexico. You can go out and raise money to send Light to Mexico. There's nothing illegal about that, but you have to tell people that's what you're going to do first. You can't say, give us money for dogs and cats and then send Light down to Cancun or Cozumel or wherever it is that you want to go. So you have this heightened duty. You're not there to be a rubber stamp. And so we take a moment and we use Robert's Rules of Order because we want to make sure that every single person has an opportunity, all right, to have a smooth and efficient meeting. Parliamentary procedure should never be used to stifle debate. You should never use parliamentary procedure to shut somebody down or to preclude them from letting their voice be heard. Rather, parliamentary procedure should be used to make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak in a timely, professional, and efficient manner. We have everyone in the room today. We want to give everyone an opportunity to speak. Unfortunately, we cannot allow everyone to speak for half an hour. I'm going to have to ask that we limit comment to 2 minutes. These are the sorts of steps. We don't ever want to use parliamentary procedure to shut people out. Lastly, the third and final reason for using parliamentary procedure is we want to make sure that we have a consistent and professional meeting. When members of the public, when a potential board member, when a new board member shows up, and you're able to offer a consistent meeting to say, this is how we do things. We start, we do this, we do that, and then we adjourn and we move on. It gives you consistency and it gives you professionalism. When you're looking to ask, think about the traits that people saw in you when they asked you to be a board member. Think about the discussion that you have when you're, oh boy, we need a new board member. Who do we need? Well, we need somebody who's dumb, never offers anything, comes late all the time, and can't ever get any tasks done. That's not what we're looking for in board members, right? We're looking for people who are smart, who are wise, who can get the job done. And so what we want to do is we want to show them when they come to their very first board meeting, or when members of the public come, we want to show them that we're a professional organization and we're moving forward. So, for the Civil War Roundtable, does anyone here, it's a tough guess, does anyone here know who Robert's Rules of Order were named after? I'll give you a clue, it starts with R. Robert, yeah, absolutely. This is a fascinating story. I'm not from Ohio. It bothers me that none of you silly Ohioans actually know Ohio history, and I absolutely love it. So, Henry Robert was actually born in South Carolina, in Robertville, South Carolina in 1837. He was born into, his family had been there for years, and his family was a slave-owning family in South Carolina. His father was a Baptist minister, and his father was repulsed by this family slave owner. Do I need to talk more?
No, I just need to, yes, thank you.
His father was actually repulsed by his family's slavery, and in fact, freed all of the slaves that he inherited and moved to Portsmouth, Ohio, where he continued to advocate for abolition. Interestingly enough, Henry Roberts' father is the subject matter of a PhD dissertation from the University of Georgia called The Wages of Conscience, talking about how challenging it was in antebellum South for ministers who were diametrically opposed to slavery to continue to try to have their conversation and to attend to their flock while at the same time advocating for the abolition of slavery. But Henry Robert moved from South Carolina with his family to Portsmouth, Ohio, where he grew up. He grew up in Portsmouth, Ohio, as part of the strong abolitionist family. In 1857, he matriculated to the United States Military Academy at West Point. In 1853. He graduated in 1857, 4 years later, and was commissioned a second lieutenant in the Corps of Engineers. When the Civil War came, he continued to be loyal to the Union forces, much to the chagrin of the remainder of his family in South Carolina who fought for the Confederate cause. But Brigadier General, as he ultimately retired, Robert was a strong Unionist and a strong opponent of slavery. In 1863, a devoutly religious man, he was in Washington, D.C., when he was asked to lead a meeting at a local church. And despite his education from West Point, despite the fact that he was an absolutely gifted engineer, he felt completely unable to complete the task. After the Civil War, as he moved throughout the United States working on engineering projects, he continually discovered that every place he went, meetings were run differently. And he didn't know, and even when part of the same church, as he would join a new Baptist church, when he relocated, he was shocked and appalled that every meeting was run differently. Finally, living in San Francisco in 1876, he was part of a couple of local charitable organizations, not unlike most of you are, and in each meeting he went to was a completely different set of rules. Frustrated, he sat down and in 1876 wrote his book, The Rules of Parliamentary Procedure. There were 4 editions of the book published in his lifetime before he passed away in 1923, and we are currently on the 12th edition of Robert's Rules of Order, and there we have one right there in the back for all of you to see. He retired in 1901 as a brigadier general and recognized as a very talented military engineer, and worked on a lot of fortifications and a lot of ports and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, no one remembers him for his great engineering. What they remember him today for is his rules of parliamentary procedure. So with that, Oh, now we're on the right one. Now it's my turn. So let's go forward and let's talk about some of the most common terms and the sequence. So you've got your slides in front of you. Just to cut ahead, because this isn't a murder mystery and you want to know where it's going to go, right? We're going to talk about the terms, then we're going to talk about how those terms work, and then we got a couple of examples here that we're going to kind of walk through to see how you can handle it, right? So obviously, the first and most important and the one that you're most familiar with is a motion. You're a board, you work as one body, and so the only way that you can do anything is you have to make a motion. I move that we adjourn, second, vote, we're done. Let's leave. Everyone's done. You've got the slides. You're experts on Robert's rules. All right. So we need a motion. There has to be a second. We're a board and we want to make sure that there is interest in this discussion. A motion standing alone is not sufficient. We always need a second. I second that motion. Let's go forward. This always ends up being the problem, right? We've got something on the agenda. We want to talk about it and we start talking about it. You can't. You have a motion to accept or motion to approve, a motion to spend money, whatever it is, somebody seconds that. Now we have the discussion about that topic. It is appropriately before the board. And then we vote. This is known as call the question. We're ready for a vote. And so this should be your gold standard. Everything on your agenda, we're going to come through. We're going to spend money. We're going to not spend money. We're going to kick somebody off the board. We're going to hire a new executive director. Whatever it is, there's a motion, there's a second, there's a discussion, and then we call the question. That's the format that we want to go through. Now, there are a couple of others that come along. Oftentimes, what ends up happening is just to get something to the table, right? You're going to make a motion. So the agenda item is spend $5,000 to send Flight on vacation. I think that's a great idea, right? So I make a motion. You can second that motion just for purposes of discussion. We're going to talk more about this, and I'm going to beat you up with one of our uncomfortable examples. The fact that you moved for something or that you seconded it does not mean that you have to vote in favor of it. It's not legally required. It is my free advice to you. When you are doing that, I would say, I will second that motion only for purposes of discussion, or I will move that we give Flight $5,000 only for purposes of discussion, so that people know, so that you can tell your fellow board members, I'm not really in favor of this, but I want to get it on the table, and I want to talk about it, and so you can do that, and it's a key role. So we decide that we're discussing, we want to give Flight $5,000. And then over the course of that, you can amend that motion, right? You can amend it and say, you know what, Flight really doesn't need $5,000, he needs $7,000. And I'm like, yes, more money, right? And so we can amend a motion. Table a motion means I don't want to talk about it now. We're going to get more information. We're going to pause this. We're going to move it down. We will table a motion, and that goes on to your old business. So if you think about when your agenda, right, you've got new business and old business, motions that you have tabled go to your old business and can be brought up the next time. We're not prepared to discuss this. Maybe the person who was supposed to present to us has been unable to make it. Maybe we want more information. Refer and commit are technically two different things. You can use them interchangeably. If you ever involved in Trivia Pursuit and you need to know the difference, call me. But for purposes of this discussion, refer and commit are the same thing. This is sending this out to a quorum, sending it out to an individual, sending it out to a committee to get more information. So again, the motion was to give Flight $5,000. We've amended that motion to get $7,000. And now we want to know, is that enough money? So we could refer that to an individual to go, hey, why don't you go check and see if $7,000 will really cover that? Or the commit is committed, right? If you commit something, you're sending it to a committee. So if you have an operations committee or a finance committee or a fiscal committee, before you vote on it, you might say, I would like to commit that to the fiscal committee, the finance committee, to see if we have enough money or to see what that does to our budget. Refer and commit, you can use, trust me, You can use them interchangeably, no harm will befall you. But that's where what you want to do is kind of kick it to the curb, and we're going to let a smaller group of people take over. When I'm on, the Humane Society board, we've got 7 individuals, so we can sometimes have lively discussion. When I'm on the United Way board, we have 22 people, and so we don't always want to, let's refer this to a smaller quorum. Let's refer this to a committee to be discussed. And because I'm a lawyer, I end up always getting all the stupid bylaw questions and stuff like that. And I owe bylaws, just so you know, I owe bylaws for not 1, but 2 organizations, and I'm failing miserably at getting them both done. All right? Now, point of privilege. If you are too hot, if you are too cold, if you can't hear, if you don't have a copy of the presentation, if you need to go to the bathroom, anything that involves you personally is a point of privilege. All right. So if you literally have to go to the bathroom so bad that you are going to die and your eyeballs are floating, but you don't want to miss the presentation, then you raise your hand and you say, Chair or Mr. President or Madam President, whatever is appropriate, may I have a point of privilege? That's how you interrupt. And you can then say, could we stop and we can take a 5-minute recess so that I can step out and not miss the presentation. If the room is too hot, if the room is too cold, again, if you cannot hear the speaker, anything that involves you personally is a point of privilege. All right. And then lastly, we have point of order. Now, unfortunately for you, because you guys have been here and you're so uber professional, if I could patent this and you had to give me a dime each time you use point of order, then I could go out and buy my own lunch. You will wear out point of order. Now that you know what it is, you will wear it out. Point of order is, let's get back on track. All right. I appreciate this discussion, but somehow we have gone from giving Flight $7,000 to where my favorite places to vacation in Mexico are, and we are off track and we are off the rails. And so you raise your hand and you say, Madam Chair, I have a point of order. We're not where we are supposed to be. Point of order will get you back on track. Point of order will limit debate. Point of order will move the meeting along. All right. Those are your ways to do so. So let's now, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to use, and I've used some of these examples already, but let's take a moment then and kind of go through these and how these terms kind of actually work while you're doing this, right? So something is on your agenda, and if you skip to the bottom, skip to the end under the best advice, you have to have an agenda, right? You have to have an agenda. You're not going to work efficiently as a board if you don't have an agenda. You're not going to let the public know. You're not going to give anybody confidence to give you money. You need to have an agenda. So when there is an agenda item and you want to bring that to the floor for discussion, you make a motion. I move that we do whatever. All right. I move that we accept the executive director's report. I move that we approve the treasurer's report. I move that we purchase a new air conditioning system. Whatever it is that is on your agenda, all right? And then you can move forward. So you show up on your agenda, right? You take and roll, everybody's there. Maybe the first thing, maybe you have an executive director, maybe so you have to stand up and give a report. One of the members of the board then would say, I move to accept the executive director's report. Somebody seconds that, and then if there's any discussion, we move forward. Remember, you've got to move to get it to the floor. And we're going to talk about these in a couple of examples because it does become uncomfortable. You move in an affirmative way. So it's always a positive statement, right? I move to accept the executive director's report. Then in our discussion, we discover that the executive director's report is filled with all kinds of errors and we want to vote against it. We still list it as an approval and then we vote to not accept it. If there is a decision, it isn't a vote to reject buying a new AC system. It's a vote I vote that we purchase the new AC system, all in favor. No one says yes, everyone opposed. It should always be an affirmative discussion, but we're going to talk about a couple of uncomfortable examples. So very simply, easily is somebody has to second. Occasionally, and I have witnessed this, and it is very uncomfortable. Somebody will make a motion and literally no one will second it. And everyone just kind of stares around, who's going to second it? And everyone does this. And then, they get out their phones. I have a crucial text I have to respond to right this second because no one wants to have any further discussion. I will tell you, that's okay. There may be a time where letting something die for lack of a second is okay. Generally speaking, and this is in the free advice category, generally speaking, I think it is better practice to second solely for purposes of discussion. You are a board. And remember, one of our very first rules is we're not going to use parliamentary procedure to deny somebody the opportunity to speak. We're not going to let them be heard. And so somebody makes a motion. This is so stupid. I can't believe this. I can't support this at all. I'm not. No. And now the person who's made that motion does not feel that they've been heard. They haven't had an opportunity to have their say. And you, frankly, haven't had the opportunity to express why you're opposed to it. So I have been in meetings where a motion has died for lack of second. It is always uncomfortable. It would be my free advice to you to say, I second the motion only for purposes of discussion. I second the motion only for the purposes of bringing it to the floor. Allow the person who made the motion to speak, and then frankly, tell them why you're opposed to it. No, I'm sorry, I cannot support that. I don't think that's a good use of our time or money. So you agree with the idea, but you want changes. This is the amendment process. We do this all the time in our boards, but we forget to actually amend the motion. Every one of you have been there, right? We've had this discussion. We're going to fix the AC system. Well, honestly, if we're going to fix the AC system, it's going to cost us $10,000 to get them in. We might as well just fix the whole furnace too. Let's fix the whole kit and caboodle. Because for $12,000, you can get a brand new system as opposed to just 10 just to fix the AC. And then we go ahead and we vote on that. Take the time, take the moment to actually amend the motion. I amend my motion to not just replace the AC, but to replace the entire HVAC system. Take that time to actually amend the motion. Whoever is your stenographer, whoever is keeping the minutes of your meeting, will appreciate it and will make sure that we have everybody on track. On more times than I can count, we've gotten around to the vote and someone has said, what are we voting on again? I'm sorry, I'm confused. What are we approving? All right, so make that amendment and go ahead and make that amendment. Now, let's go forward. We'll stop right now. Okay, so you want to delay for more information. You will vote. Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Does the person who made the original motion need to be the one who makes the amendment, or can it be amended by anyone?
Can be amended by anyone. Can be amended by anyone. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have to second the amendment?
You do have to second the amendment. Yes, ma'am. You have to second the amendment. So let's just kind of walk through this here real quick. So when you want to delay and you want more information, and delay is not necessarily a bad thing, right? I mean, hey, wait a minute, this is a pretty contentious issue. There's a lot of information. You know what? I want to let heads cool. Tabling isn't necessarily bad. But so what ends up happening is, and we'll go back to my ridiculous example, we want to give Flight $5,000. So we're going to bring a motion to the floor for a discussion to give Flight $5,000. Yes. All right. There is a second to that motion. Now it's on the floor for discussion. During the course of that discussion, we realize that $5,000 is not enough, and we agree, but we want to amend it. Now we amend it to give me $7,000. That is also seconded. Then somebody says, wait a minute, this has gotten out of control. $7,000 is a lot of money. I'm not sure that this is a great idea. I want to table it. All right. And then there is a second. At that moment, you always do the most recent motion first. All right. So when the question is called, the first vote would be, do we table this, yes or no? No, we're not going to table. All right. Then you move back to your previous motion. The last motion we had was an amendment to amend the motion to be $7,000. Yes or no? That fails. And then we get back to the original motion we're now back to the original motion to give Flight $5,000. So you work your way back. The last motion made is always the first motion voted on. If that motion passes for whatever, then everything else falls off, right? If we're going to table it, then the amendment dies and the motion to pass dies. If we don't table it, then we go back to the amendment. If the amendment passes, boom, we're done, all right? And then obviously if not, so we always want to vote on what comes last, the last motion made. As the chair, in a heated discussion, this can be a little bit complicated. And so it's okay to say, whoa, hold on for a second here. We've got everybody talking. Let's stop and see where we are. The last thing that I heard was a motion to table. Do I have a second? Now the appropriate discussion is on the motion to table. All right, and it's okay to move that forward.
Question,
Yes, ma'am.
if during your discussion, the amendment is made before you vote on it,
Mhm.
how do you handle that?
So we'll go back to my example, right?
Yeah, yeah, okay,
So somebody makes an amendment to now give me 7,000 instead of 5,000, all right? If you do not want to give me any money at all, right, then you vote no on that amendment. If you want to give me $5,000, but not 7, right, then you vote no on the amendment and we move back then to the original motion. If you just want to get rid of me and giving me $7,000 to get rid of me is a good deal, then you vote yes on that. So what we need to do is we want to kind of move these things along. And while that discussion is going on, another motion, can be made. And so what ends up happening is we're discussing whether or not we should agree to your amendment when Mr. Jackson up here, Mr. Jackson says, no, wait a minute. This has gotten out of hand. I'm going to make a motion to table. There's a second to that motion. And then everyone thinks, thank goodness we don't have to discuss this, and they can vote to table. Or alternatively, we disagree with Mr. Jackson and we say, no. We want to resolve this right now.
okay, and if the motion is voted on and then a motion to amend, you still handle it the same way,
No.
or can you?
No, if we vote to approve the motion, all right, then that's it, and we move on to the next topic of discussion. All right, then we move on. This is underutilized. And I would really strongly recommend that you put this in your quiver. All right, this is the tool that you want in your toolkit. When we get into these sorts of discussions, all right, we'll go back to the HVAC discussion. All right, I know that I like air conditioning. I'm a big fan of it. I know I push the buttons down to 68 and then I wonder why am I not cool enough, right? That is the sum total of my knowledge of HVAC. As the old joke goes, I couldn't even spell HVAC. So when it comes, seriously folks, those are the jokes. Honestly, very disappointing. That comes before the board, right? We want a new HVAC system. I make a motion to approve the new HVAC system, all right? Ms. Newbanks seconds my motion. Now we have some discussion on it. Lots of information is coming back and forth. Well, maybe we should get a heat pump. Maybe we should do geothermal. What about this? What about that? They say, wait, stop. This is too much information. I am a board member. I'm a lawyer by training. I flunked math every time I took it. All right. I barely own a screwdriver. I do have to tell you the funniest story. Just bear with me for 2 seconds. We were out with the commissioners looking at new sewer systems for the Devola sewer project. And the guy is trying to open up the fuse box for us to take a look at. And he can't get it open. And he says, I think this requires a special tool. I'm going to go grab the electrician. And Commissioner Booth bends down and takes a look at it and says, I think that's a Phillips head screwdriver. And the guy says, yeah, I need to go in. And his special tool was a Phillips head screwdriver, which I thought was kind of funny. But it's okay. If you have a large board with standing committees, then go ahead and commit it. I'm going to commit this to our operations committee or our maintenance committee or our facilities committee, right? So we own a building, the Humane Society Shelter, right? When this discussion of HVAC comes up, it's okay to commit that to the facilities committee. If you do not have a standing committee, if your board doesn't have standing committees, my Buckeye Hill Support Services Board, of which I serve as vice president, doesn't have standing committees, that's okay. You can refer it to a smaller organization. Unfortunately for me, I happen to know Robert's Rules of Order. We wanted to amend our bylaws on the United Way board. We did not have a committee that was appropriate. And so, like the idiot I am, sheepishly, I raised my hand from the back and I said, hey, Mr. Chair, actually you don't have to refer it to a committee. You could just pick, 2 or 3 people and say, have them write the bylaws. Well, they did. And I was unfortunately one of the 3 people selected. So it's okay to look at your board and say, this information is too technical. I don't want to discuss it. What I want to do is I want to refer it to 2 or 3 people on our board who can go out and get more information about it and report back to us. If you have a standing committee, commit it to the committee. If not, refer it to a group of people on the board. Yes, sir.
And then depending on how pressing the issue is, it either gets brought back at the next regularly scheduled, or you would have to call a special.
Exactly. So did everyone hear that, right? Depending on the pressing nature of the meeting, then you can either bring it up at your next regularly scheduled board meeting, and that would be on the agenda. The special subcommittee, we asked 3 board members to go research this. They would report it. If, so back to our example, we were actually concerned that the temperature might be getting too cold for the animals. And so, yes, to just that, we asked a couple of people to go research 2 options, and then we called a special board meeting a week later to go ahead and actually, all right, tell us what you have. You have tools in your kit bag, right? So table and commit and refer are ways for you to stop. Now remember, delay by itself is not necessarily bad. You are responsible in your committee either for the donations that somebody in our community has made to your organization, or you are responsible for taxpayer dollars. These aren't your dollars, right? How many times have you gone out for dinner and against your better judgment, bought sushi from a gas station and then regretted your decision later? That's your money and you get to do stupid things with it. When people donate money to our organizations, when people pay taxes and we're accountable for spending that taxpayer dollars or those donated dollars, we don't get to make stupid decisions. So it's okay to table it, all right? It's okay to commit it or to refer. So let's just go through a couple of quick examples here so that you would kind of understand where we're at, all right? Ms. Johnson comes in and she presents to my board that I should give lots of money to the Boys and Girls Club. And this sounds like a great idea, all right? And I want to give lots of money to the Boys and Girls Club. So we have some discussion about that. We get to a point where we're wondering, is this enough money? We want to build a swimming pool. Are we giving enough money? We want to make sure that this can help move the project forward. At that point, Ms. Johnson is unsure. She's presenting to the board. We've made a motion. We seconded it. We're having discussion about it. All right. And at that moment, I may make a motion to table. I will say, I want to table this motion and invite Ms. Johnson to come back next month to talk to us about the specific cost, of the pool and where our monies could go, right? We're going to invite her back. She's going to come in and we're going to see. There may be something in front of us, right, that we want public comment on. The health department is going to issue new guidance and new rules and new regulations. It comes before the health department board. The board hears it. And then I say, you know what? I want to table this for a month to see if there's any public comment. I want to see if anybody wants to come forward. I'm not opposed to this, but I want to delay it for a month to afford an opportunity for us to come back and have great discussion. All right. Mr. Murray and I are canine lovers. We're not feline lovers. All right. We love the dogs, not the cats. So something comes up to present to the Humane Society board, money for cats. I'm like, not for me. likes them, no, not for me, right? But our cat lovers are not there. Our cat lovers are not there to speak as to why this is important for the Humane Society. So we might table it, even though we have a quorum, we might table it, and Light and I might say, you know what? Let's table this motion till next month when all of our board members are present, or when someone can come here and speak to that. So those would be kind of three examples. On the other hand, if you are having a very, very, very technical discussion, all right, and you want to make sure you know, how is this going to impact our finances? I'm going to commit this to our finance committee. Go back and run some numbers. You know, how does this work? Are we going to be able to make payroll, you know, if we give out this large donation, or if we make this large investment? You might commit it to, again, back to our HVAC example, you have a facilities committee, you would commit it to them. So when you want to build the pool, I'm sure that you've got somebody on your board that, you know, committee responsible for the operations or for the building, and you commit it to them. What does building a pool look like? If you don't have a standing committee, or if you don't have a standing committee that has that level of expertise, it's perfectly acceptable to volunteer some of your board members, right? To say, I refer this to these three board members to go get more information, and just as you said, come back and report back to us, okay? So then we went through these, and we'll just kind of do these two together, right? So questions about procedure are point of order questions. The where this comes up most often is, oh my goodness, we are off the rails. We are no longer talking about what we want to talk about. And so you raise your hand, Mr. Chair, is the point of order. Is this germane to our discussion? Point of order, I don't think that this information is relevant to the question at hand. It's not that this isn't good information, and it's not that I don't want to hear it, but we're here on a very specific motion, right? We had a motion for Flight to get $5,000. We amended that motion to give him $7,000. And now we're on some discussion about, you know, Light's vacation in South Carolina, and we've lost track of things. So that point of order is going to get you back. Point of order is what you're also going to use to start to limit debate. And we're going to get into this in a couple of examples in just a moment. So when you have discussion between two board members that is getting rather heated, right, then you might say, point of order, Mr. Chair, maybe we could refocus this discussion between other board members. And what comes after point of order is anything that you want. It doesn't have to be in any particular order. And then obviously, point of privilege is when you need to take a break. Now, put this in your hip pocket, all right? Put this in your hip pocket. When things get really heated, and they will, I promise you, at some point in time, everyone, you've invited people to be part of your board because they're passionate about it. You've invited people to be part of your board because they're leaders in their community, and they're smart, and they've got great judgment. And so when I see things one way and Mr. Murray sees things another way, sometimes we're strong people and sometimes things get heated. Remember this point of privilege. And raise your hand. Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Tabling and referring to committee, does that still require
A second, and a motion, second, and then a vote, yes. So I move that we refer this to a subcommittee. I move that we, commit it to a committee, second, vote, and and absolutely. On the point of privilege, keep this in your hip pocket. Now look, most of the time, if you just have to go to the bathroom, the conversation is boring, just slip out flat where you go. Your phone rings, right, and it's your kids. And I'll tell you what, when your kids call, always take it. Anyone who tells you not to take a call from your kids, don't ever listen to that person again. There's nothing in your world that is going on more important than taking the call from your kids. Because the one time you don't take that call is when their car's broken down on the side of the road or the house is burning down. Every time you take the call from your kids, it's going to be, hey, Dad, can I have another popsicle? Now's not a good time. I'll call you back later. But when you look down at your phone and it's your kids calling, you can politely step out and take it. But keep the point of privilege with you so that when things get heated, when a member of the public is very upset, when two board members are going at it, you can raise your hand, Madam Chair, could we have a point of privilege, please? I really need to take a 5-minute recess. Could I go to the bathroom? And you'd be surprised how much 5 or 10 minutes can just calm everything down. Yes, sir.
If your meetings are public, does it have to be a member that makes a point of privilege or calls a point of order, or can it be somebody from the public?
No, it has to be a member of the board. Yes, once I get ready to you, sir.
Like, what is the formal procedure for the point of privilege? If somebody requests that, is it just given?
Yes, that's solely by, the chair doesn't need anything else. And so that's why the point of privilege, and thank you, I'm glad you brought that up. That's why the point of privilege is so powerful, right? That's solely in the discretion of the chair. So you say, Madam Chair, point of privilege, please. Could we take a 5-minute recess while I use the restroom? No second, no vote. The chair says, we take a 5-minute recess. That's why it's a powerful tool that you can use to lower temperatures. And yes, absolutely. And to that point, and thank you for bringing it up, point of orders don't require a second or a vote either, right? Point of order, Madam Chair, I don't think that this is germane to our topic. And the chair says, you're right, I agree. Let's try to get back to the motion at hand. And then we'll take these two together as well. All the question means you're ready to vote, all right? So you have discussion and sometimes you're just sitting around. Maybe the chair is daydreaming. Maybe he or she is texting. Everyone's kind of tuned out and you can call the question. Madam Chair, I call the question. If you think debate has gotten old and mundane, if you think we are rehashing the same things, Mr. Chair, Mr. President, I think all the points have been made. I call the question, all right? And that's at the discretion of the chair. Again, the chair says, okay, we've had a motion, we've had a second, we've had discussion. Someone has called the question, we'll move forward to a vote. If someone calls the question, all right, and you're not ready, you want to keep talking, then you raise your hand and say, point of order, I would like to make another comment about that, or point of order, I want to hear what Ms. Newbanks has to say on that issue before we vote. So if someone calls the question and you don't want to vote, it's point of order. That's what will get you back there, okay? Now, call the roll. We're going to talk about this. 90%, 95%, hopefully 99% of the things that you do at your board are non-controversial, right? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The vote passes and we move on, all right? When there is something controversial out there, all right, and you want to make sure, there's Ms. Newbanks, stenographer in hand, right, taking copious notes. You want to make sure that it's clear that you voted against this or that you voted in favor of it. You want to make sure that you call the roll and you say, I want to call the roll. Unless your bylaws prohibit this, unless your individual bylaws prohibit this, a motion to call the roll it's automatic. The chair doesn't have any discretion on that. When you say, I would like to call the roll, then the secretary has to get each person's vote individually. For the purposes of your board, do not call the roll every time. You'll never get anything done, right? All in favor of accepting the minutes for last meeting, call the roll, right? Who's in favor of loving puppy dogs? All call the roll, right? Things will bog down. But we're going to get into a couple of examples where you would definitely want to call the roll. So let's get into some challenging problems, all right? First and foremost, we've all been there, right? Members of the public, all right? The people are upset. People are upset because we take too many dogs. People are upset because we don't give enough dogs away, right? Everybody I know, members of the public, especially here under the COVID-19, people wanted to show up and give their expression. People are upset about the expansion. People are upset about the expansion. People are upset that you're not expanding fast enough. Those folks come through, all right? So we make a motion, right? All those in favor of expanding the Boys and Girls Club and building a swimming pool, I make a motion. There's a second, there's discussion. Use the rules of order, all right, and lay it out in advance. If your bylaws dictate, that's fine. If your bylaws are silent to it, then your chair can make that decision at that moment. If your chair is not ready to go, that's why point of order is for you. The question becomes, you need clear dialogue between you and members of the public. If it's not in your bylaws, your chair or president has to decide. Either the board is going to discuss this first, and then we're going to open it to public comment, or alternatively, we're going to allow members of the public to speak first, and then we're going to allow member discussion. Do not allow individual members of the public to get into a debate with your board. That is bad business. I promise you it is going to end well. How dare you do that? I can't believe that you're in favor of this, and you're going to end up with a one-on-one argument. Those comments from members of the public should be directed to the chair. I am disappointed. Thank you. And then we'll turn, and if a member of our board wants to respond, he or she can. Clearly articulate in advance of any contentious issue when you're going to let members of the public speak and how they can be called upon. We're going to race through the last two because we've only got a few minutes left. This is a real problem, all right? This is a real problem. Negative external actors, all right? Negative external actors. So imagine for a moment that the neo-Nazis want to donate money to your cause, and we'll pick on Mr. Murray since he's here in the front row. The neo-Nazis want to donate money to the Humane Society. What are you going to do? This is no good can come of this, right? Why did you pick us? Can't you just go away? That's what you want to say, all right? But you have to follow the rules. You're knowledgeable about Robert's Rules of Order, all right? And you're going to handle this appropriately. You put it on the agenda, all right? Neo-Nazis, donation, right? It's right there. It's on the agenda. It comes forward. Now, let me tell you the right way to do it, and let me tell you the way that I would do it, all right? The right way to do that is when that comes up, all right, on the agenda, then I would say, I make a motion that we accept the neo-Nazis donation for purposes of discussion only, all right? And then someone would second it for purposes of discussion only. Then I would say, I cannot believe that these folks would want to show up here and give us their money. It'll be a cold day in hell before I take their money. I'm going to vote no, all right? That's what I would say. The problem is that Michelle might just take that first quote that says, I move to accept the neo-Nazis money, all right, and not include the second part. This would be one of those examples where it's okay to break the rules just a little bit. My motion would be, I move that we do not accept their money. Your motion should almost always be in the affirmative, almost always be in the positive. But believe me, if the Communist Party shows up or the neo-Nazi party shows up or any of those sorts of people and wants to crash, personally, I would make it in the negative rather than risk somebody ever saying to you, hey, you were in support of this. This is one of these places where you will want to use the roll call vote to protect yourself, right? You want to be on the record. We called the roll and I voted against this. So that when somebody comes back, and believe me, these things happen, all right? People come to the Humane Society, to the Health Department Board, to the City of Belfry. People come with negative agendas, all right? And what they want to do is publicly embarrass you. With Facebook and Twitter and these sorts of things, they want to publicly embarrass you. You're going to use Robert's Rules of Order, and what you're going to say is, we put you on the agenda, we made a motion, we seconded that motion, we heard what you had to say, and then we voted you down, and we denied it. And it is challenging and it is difficult, but it is something that you can work through. Believe me, I promise you, somebody here in the next year is going to have a negative external actor, somebody who just wants to embarrass your organization, someone who's got an axe to grind is going to come and try to embarrass you.
It's like if you have a situation where you have a negative motion, is it okay to preface the board and let them know what a yay and a nay vote?
Yes,
means?
yeah, and absolutely, and you need to make sure that they know that, right? And you would say the negative motion, and thank you. So most of the time, if you're in favor of something, you vote aye. If you're opposed to it, you vote nay. But Mr. Jackson's 100% correct. And you as chair would want to remind people, Flight's motion was to reject the donation. If you are in favor of rejecting the donation, you would vote yay or aye. If you're opposed, you would vote nay. So just be careful, with that as you're moving forward. The last thing, I know all of you have had this at some point in time, right? You've got passionate people who are on the board. And these folks want to share things. We have cat lovers and dog lovers. I will tell you, at Buckeye Hill Support Services, we're the organization building the low-income senior housing project out behind the county home. It got pretty heated. We got down to 2 vendors to build it. And, 3 board members felt really strongly about one vendor and 2 board members felt really strongly about another board member. There's no communists in the organization, right? I mean, everybody there wants what's best, but we get sometimes where it gets a little bit heated, all right? The Boys and Girls Club is doing great things. We have one of the most vibrant chapters of the Boys and Girls Club throughout not only Ohio, but the eastern United States. And some members of the board say, we're doing great things. We need to stop and catch our breath. Some members of the board say, no, we've got momentum. We want to charge full speed ahead. Neither of these positions are intrinsically wrong, right? I mean, these are places where people are coming from heartfelt positions. And so it is the onus is on you as one of the board members who is hopefully not emotionally, invested in these sorts of things, to either help the chair through this sort of situation or to make sure that the tempers stay low. Again, point of personal privilege, can we take a 5-minute recess, or point of order are the 2 ways I think to move through this. And I just want to hit these best advice to you, because I want to come back to these 2 right here. Have an agenda. If you do not have an agenda, you're going to be lost. So make sure you have an agenda. Identify the action items, all right? Identify those items in advance. If you're the director, like Mr. Jackson, if you're the chair of the board, identify those places where you're looking for board input, where you're looking for board discussion, so that the board knows in advance. I'm actually looking for feedback from you as opposed to looking for you to approve or ratify, a decision that has been made. But identify those kind of real action items out there where you're looking for a board vote before you go forward. Limit public comment. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. If it's not in your bylaws, that's okay. The chair can look at your agenda and the chair can make a decision at the beginning of the meeting to say, looking at today's agenda, I only see a few people in the audience. Today, we're going to limit public comment to 5 minutes, all right? Conversely, it may be a very controversial issue. When I served on the Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Dublin, most of the time people come through, right? There's just the people who actually have the motions in front of them. I want to paint my door orange, or I want to build, I want to change the use of a building, and no one shows up except for the applicant, him or herself. Occasionally, when somebody wanted to expand the baseball stadium, you would have the neighborhood show up. When the chair comes in or sits down and you see 20 or 30 people in the room, if you're not the chair, I would go up to the chair and say, I recommend that we limit public comment to 2 minutes a person or a minute a person. And it would be the responsibility of the secretary to do that. You want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to have their voice heard. You're limiting debate, not because I'm not interested in what you have to say. I'm limited in debate because I've got 18 people on this row, and if I give each of you 10 minutes to speak, we'll be here for 3 hours, all right? And so you want to be clear as to what you're doing. Lastly, and this goes back to that, if 2 board members are going at it, if you know that something is going to be there, you want to limit the debate that you're going to have on items on your agenda. Number 1, in your bylaws, you can simply say, we limit things to 10 minutes or 20 minutes worth of discussion. Or specifically, as chair at the beginning of the meeting, you can stand up and say, oh my gosh, we have a very heavy agenda for today's meeting. I'm going to limit debate to 10 minutes on each subject so that we can move the meeting along. If at the end of 10 minutes, you think that there is more that needs to be said, we can table it, we can refer it, we can commit it, but we don't have to cover it now. So 1 o'clock, I'm done. Unfortunately, you are not. I get to leave, but you have to stay here for 15 more minutes. So, questions, comments, concerns, worries? Yes, ma'am.
You were saying if I were in this situation, I would move.
Right.
Does that mean you're the chair or on the board?
No, so the chair cannot move.
That's what I thought. That's why I was asking if you were acting as chair.
No, so, in that situation, what I should legally do if the neo-Nazis, so Mr. Murray's the president, we have a president and chair are used interchangeably, don't worry about it. Mr. Murray's the president of our board. If the neo-Nazis showed up with a $5,000 donation, then as vice president, what I should say is I move that we approve the neo-Nazis donation for purposes of discussion only, and then vote nay. But I don't want my name being affiliated with neo-Nazis in any way, shape, or form. So in that extreme instance, I would say, no, I make a motion that we do not accept. But generally speaking, you should try to do things, in the affirmative. And again, remember, the fact that you made a motion for or seconded does not require you to vote in favor of it. But don't trick up your board members, right? Your fellow board members. If you say, I move that we donate $5,000, and then you turn around and vote against it, your board, wait a minute, well, I thought this was your idea. No. I made that motion solely to get it onto the floor for discussion, and I would add that in. I move that we make this donation solely for purposes of discussion. I second it solely for purposes of discussion. And then I want to come back to Mr. Jackson's comment. You are always welcome through point of order if you're not the chair, or if you're the chair, please make sure people know what they're voting on. That was an excellent point, right? So, point of order, chair, please, we're voting on the motion to table. An aye vote means it's going to be tabled till next month. A nay vote means we're going to continue to discuss, right? It's perfectly acceptable. If you're the chair, you can just say that. If you're not the chair, point of order. That's point of order. Madam Chair, could you please remind us what we're voting on and what an aye and a nay vote means? Yes, sir. You
I
go
had
first.
something interesting come up at a recent board meeting where there was a proposal made at the meeting. And so we decided to go ahead and have a vote on it. And someone who's also a member of another board said, we can't vote on that, can we? Because it wasn't on the agenda for today. So I'm assuming that was a policy of the other organization. that we
Yes,
had.
so those are in bylaws. Part of what you want to make sure, and it is bad habit to get into, to repeatedly amending your agenda. And so you want to make sure, again, you're spending taxpayer dollars, you're spending donor dollars. You want to make sure that the people who are interested in your organization know what those topics of discussion, are going to be, and you want to put that out publicly in advance. In your bylaws, you may require everything has to be on the agenda a week out or a month out or any of those sorts of things. You, assuming your bylaws do not prohibit it, you always can amend the agenda. And so someone would come in, we have a health department board meeting, Mr. Jackson comes in and he says, I have to make an amendment to the agenda. I would like to add, we've got a great opportunity to accept a grant, but we have to do it, very quickly. And so whoever the current president of the health department is, says, we have an amended agenda. Somebody would say, I move to accept the amended agenda, second, and then we vote. And now that proposal is officially, part of the agenda. But you would want to go through those steps. Does that answer your question?
So basically it's up to what, it's within your bylaws.
It's
not
within your bylaws
necessarily-
and your
Okay,
organization.
so it's not a point of order. it's
No,
just-
but you definitely want to make sure that that's on your agenda. And it's something to be careful. And Mr. Murray can tell you, that's one of the rules that I follow, in the breach, right? As we're having interesting discussions, something, I go, well, hey, wait a minute, we're all here, let's fix this right now. And it's a tempting thing, but it's not good habit to get into. You want to make sure it's on the agenda. There's a question in the back, sir?
Just to sort of play off of that, the amending an agenda, that wouldn't work with organizations that require 30-day legal ads or things like that.
Right, and that ends up being, and that's something that you're gonna have to look at within your own bylaws and say, wait a minute, if you are legally required to publish your agenda in advance with notice, then unfortunately, what you're gonna have to tell somebody is we cannot take advantage of that. Not to get too far into the weeds on that, but I will tell you, if that is a legal requirement, all right, I would look seriously and I would reach out to council, but I would look at granting your executive director or establishing an executive committee that can take immediate action that can then be ratified by the board at a later date. For example, you do not want to be in a situation where you become aware, and for any of you, when you think about the CARES Act and ARPA and these sorts of things, you don't want to be in a position where you find out there is money available to help my organization, but the deadline is Friday. We have to apply for that money on Friday. That would be something that normally would require a board vote. Maybe you can have a special meeting, but what I would recommend is within your bylaws, say either an executive committee made up of the president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer can agree on an action, and then the full board can ratify it later. Or you might delegate that authority, to an executive director so that you can act quickly to apply for that grant. Then you can publish your legal notice. There's the ratification of the grant application. We meet, Mr. Jackson stands up and says, look, my fault, whose fault, I don't know. I just found out about this grant on Tuesday. It had to be applied for by Friday. We went ahead and applied for the grant, and now we're looking for full board, confirmation and affirmation. Yes, sir.
Just briefly, does the chair can or cannot call point of order?
The chair cannot call a point of order. The chair would just make that decision, that him or herself. And the chair would just say, hey, stop, that's not germane to this topic. The point of order is your way of saying, hey, chair,
No call the question, chair can't.
the chair can't call the question. Okay? Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
There's been debate about quorum. And who does the chair count in the quorum?
All members of the board, including him or herself. Now, according to Mr. Robert, Brigadier General Robert, right, 51%. Some organizations require 2/3, so make sure within your own bylaws, but all voting members count for that quorum. One of the real tricks, and be aware of this, with Zoom, I've been a part of a lot of organizations where we've allowed somebody to participate via Zoom, but they do not count for quorum in your board bylaws. What ended up happening, as you can imagine, is probably sometime in the 90s or early 2000s, they allowed people to call in, right, just to kind of hear, but only on the phone. What the bylaws say is in order for there to be a quorum, 2/3 of the voting members must be present. And so they put that into the rules because people were calling in on conference calls and stuff like that. That's one of the situations where you're going to have to go back and look and talk to your board to say, do we want to allow just participating via Zoom, count or not count? Just to that point, look closely if it happens, and I've been on a couple of boards. So imagine, just to make the math easy, you've got 7 members of your board, and you need a simple majority for quorum. So now you need 4 board members there. 4 board members come in and sit down, and you're doing business. Then all of a sudden, one of your board members stands up and says, I have another engagement. I've got an emergency at home. I have to go. If you get close, then what you have to do as chair to say, okay, wait a minute. And that's why, back to this, you identify all of the action items that are on here, right? Whoa. Can you stay for 2 more minutes? Because we need a quorum and we need to vote on this. And you want those kind of clearly identified, right up front. Yes, sir.
Tied vote is a fail, is that correct?
I'm sorry?
If a vote ties.
Yeah, a tie vote's a fail. A tie vote's a fail. So normally, right, we try to keep boards odd numbers, 7, 9, 13. But yeah, you've got a 7-member board, but only 6 vote, 3, that goes down. There was a question over here.
Yeah, so if the chair cannot bring the discussion back together? Is there a tool they have available to them if no one calls, point of order? Or
Well, hopefully the chair, pound the gavel and that sort of thing. No, at that point, the chair's got to literally stand up and say, stop, stop. The chair could take a 5-minute recess on his or herself, which is usually what I advise, and say, stop. We're gonna take a 5-minute recess, everyone go outside, and kind of cool off and come back. That point of order is your way of kind of directing the chair to say, Chair, I think this has gotten out of hand. I think we're moving, kind of beyond where we need to be. And again, if you think the debate has gotten stale, we're saying the same things, we're rehashing, I call the question. And again, if the chair won't do anything else, the one that's always back there for you is that point of personal privilege. I'm sorry, this is really interesting discussion. I can't wait to hear it. But if I don't go to the bathroom, I'm going to die. Can we take a 5-minute recess? That will always work, I promise you. If nothing else, that will work, and you'll get the 5-minute recess that you want to hopefully. Yeah, people. Yes, sir.
So the chair cannot break the topic.
Well, so the chair gets a vote, right? So, the chair is a member of the board. What would end up happening if there were 7 members of the board and 3 voted in favor and 3 voted against? Then at that point, the chair, yes, would be the time vote. In this situation, we have the chair present with 5 other members, and the chair and 2 members vote aye and 3 members vote nay, and a tie vote would fail. Yes, ma'am.
So if somebody is giving like committee reports, like the marketing report, the finance report, and they wanted to vote on something within their report, does the chair still facilitate all do I have a motion to call?
Right, so look, and we're gonna go way over time, but let me try to do this quickly because I kind of left that out because this gets a little complicated, right? So first, back to the action items, when you've got a committee report, right? So we'll go back to my HVAC example, right? I have a committee report and I want the committee to vote to approve a new HVAC. That really should be a separate agenda item. Here's my committee report, and I have a second action item that I specifically want to discuss. We want to put all the board members on notice about what they're being asked to vote on tonight. We want to put all of our stakeholders, all of the members of the community on board with what's being, asked to be voted on tonight. Again, we have a lot of volunteers. We'll just keep using Mr. Murray. We have a lot of volunteers that work out at the Humane Society, and we also have paid staff. We want them to know the HVAC is on discussion because they may want to show up and talk about, how cold or how hot it is and how important this is. We want to make sure that they know. It is good practice. At the end of your committee report, so our facilities committee gives a report. At the end of that, you would want to make a motion to accept that report. That's what would put it right into the file, all right? A motion to accept the report puts it into your permanent record. A motion to adopt, and I did not want to get into this, where I said refer and commit, you can use interchangeably. Accept and adopt, you cannot, all right? Accept means you're bringing it into your permanent record. Adopt is just what it means. It's forever. You're adopting it. This is now mine. I'm agreeing to it and I'm owning it and it's mine, all right? And so if a committee member comes forward and, hey, we want to do this and we advocate expanding and we advocate moving on and building a bigger building in a Taj Mahal, and you adopt that report, now that has the imprimatur of the entire board. The entire board has said, we're now in favor of this. So please be careful. It's just you accept the committee report. We just want to put it in the permanent record and accept it. Back to the previous question about, making sure that we have an appropriate agenda. If in that facilities report, there's a discussion about HVAC and they have not pulled it out as a separate item, then that's one where we want to say, okay, wait a minute, we need to amend the agenda. This is a serious discussion. Maybe it needs to be tabled. Maybe it needs to be referred into the gentleman's comment in the back. I know that your committee report was on. We have to put this up 30 days in advance. That's what our bylaws or maybe our statutory obligation is. we're gonna have to put this on the next agenda. And so we're at 1:15 and I'm being told I have to shut up.
If
is
people
that what you
wanna-
move
I mean,
forward?
we have a few more minutes if people actually have a few more questions and wanna listen. I'm cool with going a few more minutes longer if you want.
No, I'm not. These questions are getting harder and harder. I liked it when there were no questions.
All right.
When I teach at Washington State, the kids never ask any questions. I like it a whole lot. I just stand up there and say whatever I want and no one asks. You guys, this is horrible. Never doing this again. Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Just a comment, when you give a committee report and you accept that report, that's the same thing people may not realize you do with the nominating committee.
Yes,
Right.
yes, ma'am, exactly. You're accepting that. We're just bringing it in. We're putting it in the record. Yes, ma'am. Anything else? One more, yes, I'm sorry.
Super quick, so some of the more tedious aspects of a meeting, accepting minutes from prior meeting or adjourning, still the entire process, all voting.
All the way through, you have to vote to adjourn. That was, I was gonna be really clever when no one had any, further questions. You have to have a motion to adjourn. There has to be a second, and you actually have to vote on it. Mr. Murray can tell you, I never wait, right? Somebody says a motion to adjourn, and I'm halfway to the door. You actually have to vote on the motion to adjourn. One of the best practices that I can tell you, and this is, we can have more discussion about this. I would move, if you can, to a consent agenda. And what ends up happening is you can put your previous minutes. You know, if your fiscal report is just the same every single month, if there are some, other reports that are just, they're always the same, right? Your facilities, our building is still standing, we paid the electric bill, we paid the light bill. Those things you can put on a consent agenda. Those go out to board members in advance of the meeting. The board member is supposed to read that in advance. Then the chair sits down, we approve the agenda, and the chair says, I move to the consent agenda. And then unless you want to pull something specific, hey, in the minutes, you misquoted me, then it's one vote to get all of that sort of stuff taken care of. So I find consent agendas to be very, very helpful to kind of get through some of those more tedious things. But yes, motion, second, vote is required even on something as silly as accepting the minutes from last meeting. Thank you all for coming. I apologize, no one got lunch, so no one came up and ate for
Someone came
lunch.
up
There
with-
was no one went for an apple or donut. I mean, I was here watching all of you, so grab a donut on your way out. Thank you so much for coming.
And thank you, Clyde, for coming in and speaking about this. I feel like this was very great and beneficial. And thank you all again for coming. If you didn't sign in, please just take a moment, if you have one, to sign in back there. And also want to mention really quick, the Nonprofits League Conference that is going to be May 25th. It is from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. It's great. I have an email about it. If you aren't on the mailing list, let me know and I'll send it to you. So thank you so much, everyone. This has been wonderful.
Good job.
It's a great program.
Oh, thank you so much, Charlotte.